evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Motor City Mad Mouth Show. Yes, I'm at the Motor City Mad Mouth. Pleased to be joined by my co-host, George Eichhorn. George, welcome back to the big show.
Oh, I'm ready, man. Thanks for having me on as your co-host again, Scott. Looking forward to it.
We're building something here on the No Filter Network. We are building something. Tonight, the title is The Detroit Tigers Are Hot. And you know why they're hot? Because the last time the Tigers won 24 of 34 games dated back to 7/22/2013 all the way to 8/26/13. And if that isn't good enough, okay, the Tigers are 8-2 in the past 10 games, and they've won 3 straight, and they're 79-73, not too far away from the 500 mark. George, some thoughts about where the Motor City Kitties are at?
Well, I'll tell you what, Scott, this has been a real surprise to a lot of people. Of course, they were giving up so many fans. Not to say that the fans were turning on them negatively, but just to say that they saw the frustration, they saw the saying, maybe win one game in a series. Sometimes you sneak 2 wins. It was just kind of, up until they turned the corner. Tell you what, Scott, I tell you, everybody's excited now. It's very difficult with the Lions fighting them, obviously for publicity's sake, but it's just been a tremendous story around here. That those numbers that you just quoted. I mean, winning these games in August and September means a lot, and to be back in the thick of the wild card race means a whole lot.
Well, the player of the week is obviously Kiter Montero, 2-0, 0.64 earned run average, but he started 1-5. So you talk about a guy that got off to a slow start, and the Tigers were actually using the bullpen situation, or what do they call it? The starters, or whatever you want to call it.
The opener.
The opener.
Yeah, some call it the opener.
Starter, whatever. But this guy, Kiter Montero, has done a good job doing a good job for a team that was very depleted.
You're absolutely right. I mean, to be honest with you, I don't think he was in the plans for, playing as big a role as he has to, obviously, because of the fact that they've had so many pitchers that have been injured this year. And Montero's got nothing to be ashamed of. He had that complete game win and really was pumped up, excited. And, starting 1-5, like you said, I mean, that's a miserable start. Not only that, but, he had given up a lot of runs, home runs. And, yeah, the kid has really settled down. I mean, he's trying to help deliver this team to the postseason. And that's been a bonus for Detroit, is to see this kid develop as quickly as he has in the second half, especially.
Well, sometimes pitchers take a little while to get acclimated. I know even Jack Morris struggled many, many years ago with the Tigers. But once players figure it out, they figure it out, then they become good pitchers. And I don't want to jump the gun too far against Kiter Montero, but the kid's doing a good job, and they were desperate. They were looking for any arm that they could get. And all of a sudden, this kid came along, and now he's adding a little bit, like you say, stability to this rotation.
He certainly is, Scott, and they needed that so badly, like you said, with too many injuries for the starting staff. And then you got a situation where, like you said, I can't believe how much really, A.J. Hinch and the staff have had to rely on that. Believe it or not, their bullpen has been pretty darn good most of the year. And, pressing these guys into starting games and everything like that, I've never seen a team do it as much as the Tigers have had to do it this year.
All right, I just want to point out to our audience, by the way, that I have a book called Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders, pretty much old school versus new school. George Eichhorn wrote the foreword for it, and you can get that on Amazon Kindle as well as Barnes & Noble. So go out there and check it out. This will educate you about the media, both before and after, and I'll tell you, there's a lot of big differences between when George and I started out versus where we're at the moment. So once again, Lessons from the Microphone, tuning into the enduring wisdom of visionary leaders. So there you go. You have it. There's my name on it. And hopefully you can get your copy now. So as we continue on, George, we're going to talk about A.J. Hinch on Tarek Skubal. He says when he's coming to the mound, every single person in our organization thinks we're going to win. Now, there's a side note to this, too, that I want to mention, and then we'll talk about AJ Hinch and Scooble. He's a left-hander wearing.
Well, sure.
He's a left-hander wearing Mickey Lolich's number 29, which I think should be retired, and Lolich should be in the Baseball Hall of Fame. So bear in mind that Scooble's one of those types of guys that he's wearing a number that has a lot of history to it. And as I said, going into the game, the series finale, he's 16-4 with a 2.50 earned run average. Let's talk about what AJ Hinch's thoughts on Scooble are, and then we can talk about Lolis for a moment.
Well, AJ is he's not always one to boast about his players or go overboard with some of the stats, but he is right spot on this guy. Scooble, he's got that almost like a veteran presence, I call it, where he's focused, he's laser focused. He is wearing our friend Mickey Lolich's 29, which is quite ironic, like you said, because of the fact that the Mick had a fantastic career. And but that was back in the 68 season when he won 3 games in the World Series. Tarek Skubal now is obviously the ace, and not only an ace, but he's one of the leading, if not the leading candidate for the Cy Young Award. But I think Hinch, along with Chris Fetter, the pitching coach, deserves a lot of credit for bringing this young man along. In a real world, I guess they talked about before, Casey Mize and Matt Manning, and in the same breath, they threw in Skubal. But he has been head and shoulders above his other 2 young guys on the team, meaning Manning and Mize. Manning is still in Toledo. But yeah, I think AJ has every right to want this kid, instill in him a winning confidence that every time he goes out there, you betcha Detroit's got a very good chance to win that game. And he leads in earned run average and wins, or he's tied maybe with wins now, but he still has a shot at the pitching Triple Crown. But yeah, I mean, AJ's right.
Well, think about it. Everybody's a little bit worried about Tarek Skubal being traded at the trade deadline, and AJ Hinch came out and said he's not getting traded. He told the front office that they didn't trade him. All right, they traded Jack Flaherty, but they actually got a couple of players, so I'm not going to really beat management up over the Jack Flaherty trade. I think one of them was Sweeney. Was it Trey Sweeney? I think it was.
Yep.
So you got him. So the Flaherty trade didn't bother me because, again, they're finding arms, and they're finding some arms that are actually worthwhile. But yeah, as I alluded to before, Skubal was 16-4 with a 2.50 earned run average. And now let's go back to Lolich for a moment. Okay, he's wearing the number 29, and we've talked about this numerous times. I still do believe that he belongs in the Hall of Fame.
I agree with you. I don't know why there isn't much written about that. I mean, I know the Tigers really want sweet Lou Whitaker in there really bad, obviously, and I think he deserves it too. But when you look back at that 68 team, and so few Detroit Tigers made it into the Hall of Fame. Lolich, just an outstanding career for year after year. He was the leader in strikeouts for a left-handed pitcher. The guy really, oh my God, he went out there and gave you 8-9 innings every time, piled up the wins. I mean, look, all he did was outshine Denny McClain. Okay, excuse me, 31-game winner. And Lolich, of course, got the spotlight in the MVP of the World Series. But I agree with you, Scott. I think that the committees that look at these guys, they've got to delve more into Mickey's stats and his career and his presence on the Tigers and what he meant. And not only the Tigers, but baseball in general.
Well, think about the fact that he amassed a lot of complete games. I didn't get too detailed into his stats, but let's face it, you're lucky to see 20 complete games in a guy's career nowadays, where back then that was considered the norm. So as you see with the 2024 Tigers, I'm going to talk about some key players here. First of all, we're going to go to Riley Green. Going into today, he had a batting average of 264 with 124 hits, 23 home runs, 70 ribbies in 127 games. How do you assess the play of Riley Green?
Oh, he's done a great job this year. I mean, next to Tarek's performance on the mound, I'd have to say he's the most valuable player, at least in the lineup every day. This kid doesn't do anything but hustle. He works his butt off. He comes to the stadium and he wants to make sure he has a great next 2, 3, 4 hours, whatever it's going to be in the lineup. He's doing well in the home run and the run production area, RBIs. I'd like to see his average, Scott, a little bit higher than the 260s. He still has some things to work on as far as batting goes, but I'm telling you what, he is. I think right now, yeah, he's your number one offensive threat on Detroit. I mean, he's taken a couple extra years than I thought he would to come around, but my God, he made his first All-Star team, and Riley is a fixture in the middle or near the top of that lineup every night.
Now here's the all-name team. I like a guy named Colt Keith. Now I remember the player in the NFL called Colt McCoy, but I like the name Colt. I think it's pretty neat. Colt Keith, hitting 264, 130 hits, 13 home runs, 58 RBI in 139 games. I'll tell you, this guy's come out of nowhere, or maybe he hasn't, and we don't know a lot about him, but he's a fixture in that lineup, and he plays his butt off.
He does, Scott, and he plays a great second base. He got a little bit banged up last night, his shoulder, so he actually took himself out of the game. I think it was the 8th inning or at least the late 7th inning. I'm not sure. But he really is a good ball player. Now, the Tigers went on a limb and signed him to that huge extension, from his initial, contract after he was drafted. He now is locked up. And I'll tell you what, some people in Detroit were saying, what the heck is Scott Harris doing? Well, I think so far he knew what he was doing, because this kid, like you said, has come from nowhere, and a lot of people didn't think he could do anything, but he's another one that's had a really great second half of this season, and like you said, hitting the 260 mark. I really think that he's got a bright future in Detroit.
Okay, on to Kerry Carpenter, hitting 283, 68 hits, 15 home runs, 50 RBI, played 78 games. Everybody knew this guy can hit for power, and Carpenter is not letting anybody down in that sense.
No, he's not. Kerry tore up the International League with Toledo with home runs and RBIs a few years back, and some people thought maybe he might be too one-dimensional as far as swinging for the fences, but I'll tell you what, here's another kid that hustles his butt off. It's funny because I don't know what kind of helmet he's wearing, Scott, but he sometimes loses that helmet as he runs around first base trying to leg out a double or a triple, and he's got his white head, his headband on, and he's kind of like becoming you remember Henry Boucher on the Red Wings, a little trademark for Carpenter, with that headband on, and he loses and his hair is flowing. I mean, it's just, that's not having to do with, the game itself. But as far as a player goes, yeah, he has come to and resurrected his season, as he started out awful slow too, but he's worked his way into that lineup as designated hitter, mostly, sometimes outfield.
Well, one guy who started out slow and got sent to Toledo, then came back, became a different player named Spencer Torkelson. I know everybody's waiting for him to live up to his number one overall pick status, but his current numbers at the moment are 223 with 70 hits, 8 home runs, 32 RBIs in 82 games. So Spencer, I know that I've watched some of their games here in South Florida, and it looks like he's starting to relax at the plate a little bit, where he was pressing a little bit before.
Yeah, I agree. It was, I'll tell you what, it was like, personally speaking, I think he should have gone down to Toledo a lot earlier than he did to get his game back in shape. They waited, I think, a little bit too long up here. I guess they wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. And even Dan Dickerson, our friend in the broadcast booth, I'll never forget this. Back in May, Scott, he was doing a game, and they were talking about whether Torque should be sent down to the minors. And Dan was vehement about it. He says, no way. No way. He deserves to be on this team and fix his problems up here. Well, Dan, I got news for you. I think it was a wise move by Tigers management and manager Hinch to send him down. And you know what, Scott? They didn't let him just sit down there for a week or two. No. he spent many weeks down there, a couple months, I think, even it might have been. But he has come back looking better and looking sharper. And even his defensive skills have been better at first base. So Spencer Torkelson, yeah, they're relying on him a lot. My goodness, he had 30 home runs last season.
Now, when I was in town covering the Tigers and the Miami Marlins, I was telling you in the box, this lineup does not scare me at all. They
I
beat the
remember
Marlins,
that.
I believe, 5-4, and then they never scored a run. And I'm thinking, oh my God, okay, this lineup does not scare me at all. And yet, you thought going into the year that you have a great young nucleus right down the middle of that lineup. And we haven't seen anything for much of the year until a lot of these guys started to play much better. So I'm happy that the Tigers are starting to get it figured out, although they still have about 10 more games to go. Let's not rest our laurels right now. They dug themselves a hole, and now they're finding themselves in the playing
Yeah,
meaningful ball games. But
yeah,
more power to them. But they didn't scare me at all. It was just unbelievable because all that potential there. And what do you expect? Nothing was getting done. The
yep.
next player we're going to talk about is Parker Meadows. I'll go over his average. Then we're going to talk about the last 2 months. Hitting 242 with 56 hits, 8 home runs, 27 RBIs in 72 games. But here are some numbers, okay? In August, he hit 322 with 12 extra base hits. And in September, he hit 283 with 7 extra base hits. So, with that said, okay, what are your thoughts about the turnaround of Parker Meadows? Uh, sure, he'll be back in just a moment. So, but those are the numbers for Parker Meadows. And obviously, he's certainly done a good job in some meaningful games. Hopefully, I'm sure George will be back in just a second. So, with that said, Candy, I'm like, why don't you come on for a moment till George gets on here? Oh, there's George. Okay. All right. I know we lost you for a moment. So, we're talking about Parker Meadows.
Okay.
Let's talk about what your thoughts are about
I
him.
Well, Meadows is another one, Scott. Beginning of the season, flailing at pitches, just not getting any consistency. His bat was a stinker. And the kid can fly, though. He's got great speed. He's got a great attitude. And much like Torkelson, they had to send him down. They sent him down to work on his mechanics. And I'll be darned, they call him back up. And you're right. All of a sudden now he's doing well. He's driving in crucial hits, winning a couple of games with his bat, great speed around the base paths, and he's developing into something that could be special. I agree. Back in May, in that when you were on at the ball game, that lineup didn't scare anybody, and Parker was part of that lineup that didn't scare anybody. But I don't know what's going on. I think the magic of the Toledo, the good coaches and scouts and whatever they got down there helping these guys out. But yeah, Parker Meadows, I think they are very optimistic and high on him.
Well, let me reiterate the stats over the last 2 months, and I'll say it again. August, he hit 322 with 12 extra base hits. And then obviously in September, hit 283 with 7 extra base hits as well. And mind you, as I mentioned at the top of the show, that the last time the Tigers won 24 of 34 games dates back to 2013, 722, 2013, and 826, 2013. So Parker Meadows coming around was at probably the most important time because they won a lot of key games with him coming through.
They sure did. And that's been a big part of this turnaround. Like you said, the Tigers have the best record since, early in August, of all the major league teams right now. So, yeah, these guys are, including him. I mean, they're getting a lot of contribution from a lot of guys.
Okay, very good. All right, one other guy I want to talk about, or actually there's two. Matt Vierling, 261, 129 hits, 16 home runs, 56 RBIs. He's played 135 games. This guy's done a super job.
He has. He's been a good veteran presence on that team. He's helped tremendously with stabilizing this outfield situation for the Tigers, making some good plays and being pretty consistent at the bat. He's not going to get you 30 or 40 home runs. I mean, he's not that type of ball player, but he is consistently hitting the ball and doing well. And I think Vierling was a damn good pickup for the Tigers.
Well, another guy who's a great pickup, I had an opportunity to interview him a few years ago thanks to Chad Crunk And I will say Chad Crunk has done a really good job by me finding me pit players, and some of them made it to the major leagues, including the one I'm talking about, Jake Rogers, who has been steady behind the plate, and he was involved in the Justin Verlander trade. How do you like the job that Jake Rogers has done with that pitching staff?
I love it. He has done a fantastic job. I mean, I know he'd like to hit better. He comes up with some crucial hits. He can hit home runs too. But the big thing is just like you nailed it, Scott. Stabilizing those pitchers, getting to know them, being able to call pitches, good and be great arm behind the plate. Try to throw guys out, stealing. I think the Tigers are probably better off with him behind the plate because of his arm too, and he's a leader. He loves the game. He's another guy that really works hard. And of course, they got Dingler from Ohio State. They brought him up as the backup catcher after they traded away the other catcher that they traded away. Can't think of his name.
Wasn't it Chad Kelly? I think wasn't it Chad
Kelly?
Kelly? Yeah, I think he went to Texas, didn't he?
Yeah, you're right. He did. The Rangers picked him up. Yeah, but that was expected because they're trying to get something for players that are veterans and playing decent in the first half. That was just like Flaherty. That was expected. But now Dingler is the future too, along with Rogers. Would that be great if they had a 1-2 punch at catcher?
Yeah, it's hard enough to buy one, let alone two. And mind
Yeah,
you,
that's
folks,
true.
I played the position when I was in Little League ball, and I took a beating behind the plate. But I'll tell you what, if it wasn't for catcher, I wouldn't have interviewed about 12 of them. And I did everything behind the plate, like agitate the hitter, got on the umpire's nerves, took a lot of mound visits to my pitcher, and I love framing pitches. And I probably got nailed for more catcher interferences call, and it hurt my wrist. And when you're only a young guy, that it certainly does. So, all right, let's talk about a year after Miguel Cabrera. What's it been like this year, knowing that we're not looking at the milestone numbers anymore, the Hall of Fame countdown, you know, and I know he's a part of the Tigers front office, so what's it been like without Miggy for the first year in a long time?
Well, don't kid yourself. They miss him. I know the players miss him, the coaches miss him, the manager misses him. But the fact of the matter is, you made a good point. I mean, there was a lot of focus on him, and rightfully so, when he was going after these milestones. And maybe even a little too much attention. And Tigers will never probably admit this, but I mean, it's almost like a relief. Not that he's gone, because they certainly love him as a player and a friend. But the fact that the focus is now spread out. Let's look at it that way. The focus is on all the other ball players in that lineup, everyday lineup, let's say. But Miguel, of course, deserved everything he got. He was a great player and a great Tiger of all time. But I think, call it a little bit more relaxed, or call it a little bit back to basics. They don't have to worry about all that extra media that was hanging around with Cabrera with every at-bat, as we know. And I think the Tigers are very thankful, but it was time to move on and try to develop this young team.
All right, the Tigers have 3 series left. They're going to be at Baltimore facing the Orioles. They get 3 over at Camden Yards. They're home against the Rays, and they're home against the White Sox. They've really taken out a big part of that meat of the schedule. They need to get to that Baltimore. 9 games left. What are your thoughts on how you feel that this is going to work out? I don't even have an update on the Kansas City score. Don't worry about it. We'll worry about it another time. But you got Baltimore,
Yeah.
the
I
Rays,
mean,
and the White
the fact,
Sox.
yeah. And the fact, Scott, that they took these first 2 games from Kansas City on the road is really raised a lot of eyebrows. I mean, this trend continues of them winning series, but now you're at a point where, any loss is going to hurt you, depending, again, on what Seattle and Minnesota do too. Every night, everybody's looking at the scoreboard. But I agree with you. It's a very tough schedule. Baltimore, I mean, having to play them for so many games, and then Kansas City, and then, like you said, there's the Tampa Bay series. Of course, they're out of the race, and the White Sox are horrible. So, I mean, Tigers have an opportunity, to sweep, the rest of the home games at least, but they've got to continue winning, and I think they will be. I mean, I think they do have a great chance to make the
Well,
wild card.
Yeah, the score that I'm currently have right now with the Kansas City game, it looks like the Detroit Tigers currently lead the Royals 2-1, top of the third, first and second. So yeah, these are important series against teams. Well, Baltimore's fighting for their own playoff as well. I believe
Yeah,
the Yankees have the division, so Detroit and Baltimore. I know Detroit took 2 of 3 back in at Comerica Park, and this Kansas City series, they got Scooble on the hill tonight. You get him through, and then all of a sudden this becomes more and more interesting. I know that Minnesota's ahead of them, but you're talking 9 games to overtake 2, so that's very doable for sure.
it
So,
is.
and they're
It is
playing,
doable. Yeah.
yeah, they're playing really good ball right now. And I know that you and I, over the course of the next few weeks, we're going to come back to the Motor City Mad Mouse show and revisit the Detroit Tigers. But right now, I wanted to try to bring us up to date about where they're currently standing. They're looking awfully good. Bear in mind, this is a team that many people thought would sell at the deadline. They moved some players, but they did not move impact players, is what they didn't do. And they bolstered some of their farm system a little with some of the additions versus the subtraction. So I think people, the only thing I could say to Detroit fans out there is do not go ahead and sell Scott Harris and AJ Hinch short. Don't do it. Because if you do that, then what you're going to do to me is you're making a huge mistake. Yeah, as again, the Tigers lead Kansas City 2-1. They can sweep this series in Kansas City. It'll be another big move for them. Any final
Oh yeah.
thoughts about what we've talked about here today, about what you see ahead for the Tigers over the next 9 games?
Well, no, I mean, well, yeah, basically, I agree with what you said. I mean, don't sell them short. Don't sell Scott Harris short. I mean, I know he's a young man. He's awful young, and some people may not agree with hiring somebody so young, but no, he's done a really good job. He's a lot of stuff to clean up. I liked Al Avila as a person. I think Al was a good baseball man, but it was time to move on. But don't kid yourself, Scott. Al Avila drafted and signed a lot of these ball players. The vast majority were the kids that Al had under his wing. So I'm not going to stop short. And some fans, give Al the kiss of death. No, but they're developed. They're coached good and they're developed good. And Scott Harris gets a lot of credit. But like I said, Al took a chance on a lot of these ball players. But I agree with you. I mean, the fans are excited. I mean, the crowds are bigger than they normally would be in September at the ballpark.
Right.
And of course, there's a lot of excitement around town. So that really is a good formula. But I agree with you. I mean, they got a better than average chance to make the playoffs.
Well, they just increased their lead to 4-1. But one guy you're forgetting to mention that nobody should forget is Ron Gardenhire. He took some growing pains as well with some of these players. And Ron
Yes.
Gardenhire is a guy that nobody should ever forget during this rebuild process. But you know what? It's good to be able to revisit this team. I spend a lot of time with the Miami Marlins these days here in South Florida. They got in the playoffs last year, and all of a sudden they're down. They have another teardown going on, which is a shame. And the manager Skip Schumacher is down to his last 10, 12 games as well. So you hate to see
Yeah.
it. They're painful. But the Tigers, they've obviously they're working to turn the corner, and I don't think they could have hired a better manager myself than AJ Hinch. That's for sure. This guy won a World Series in Houston. I don't care about what everybody talk about the cheating, but give me a break. You know what? What happened in Houston? I get it. Okay, that there were some things that went on, but whether you're cheating or not, you still have to play baseball no matter what. And I'm not going to. And AJ Hinch is a great manager. I'm glad the Tigers gave him another opportunity to come here, and it's paying some dividends for them as well. Rest of folks, this is the Motor City Mad Mouth Show. My name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Mad Mouth, joined by my longtime co-host George Eichhorn. We began the Sports Exchange back in the 80s, and of course, we've been working together for 44 plus years. And he did write the foreword of my book, Lessons from the Microphone. George, I'm glad. I appreciate you being on the show with us. And next week, obviously, we'll address another. We'll probably talk about the Tigers and a few other topics as we go along. We'll see how the week progresses. So, meanwhile, on behalf of George Eichhorn, my name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth, talking about the Detroit Tigers are being hot, and we'll see where this goes about a week from now. Take care, everybody, and we will see you on next week's episode of the Motor City Mad Mouse Show with Scott Morganroth and his sidekick, George Eichhorn. Good night, everybody.
Good night.